Having an online presence is very important for promoting the work that you're doing, whether it be a story for a newspaper or a blog that you're writing or a social media idea or phenomenon you want to start sort of creating. We've seen some really useful things across a number of platforms, including Google+, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. And it takes a moment to be able to sort of promote that work and to sort of get that, I guess, increased visibility for those sort of things and to encourage other people to join the conversation. Things like Google+ Hangouts has been a way we've seen people do that. So to create a conversation with the president or the prime minister of a country, people around the world can join in to have that conversation. Or starting a YouTube channel that people can follow and have comments, reply videos that you can then reply to as well. So I think using online tools to be able to further your story and to be able to find new avenues to encourage others to comment on it and also to distribute that story is a great way to use social media to support your work.
You can't hope to be a journalist without staying up to date with current events, and that's across all fields, not just your own chosen topic, because that's another thing about the modern media. The various things like sport and general news, for instance, those worlds often collide. So you have to have a fair knowledge of what's going on in the world around you, be as well read as possible. So a lot of reading, a lot of reading of newspapers, watching of news programs. I think, social media.
It's a bit like the policeman that started off with, maybe a truncheon and handcuffs if they were lucky, and now they've got mace spray and guns and walkie-talkies and torches and, whatever else comes along. Same with the journalist, as you say. When I started 30 years ago, it was good enough to just file for deadline words. Then quickly came a need for thinking pictures. Do you have a graphic with that? That's just in print. Exponentially, the demands on a journalist have changed towards breaking news, towards filing for deadline, thinking of graphics, thinking of data visualization, pictures, video. Can you take your own video? Can you edit your own video? Are you good at doing a voiceover? Oh, by the way, how's your Twitter account going? Are you on Google+? Can you moderate comments? Do you know what comments are? I mean, it's insane now, and exciting as well, about how many things are on offer for the modern journalist that were not there as recently as 5 years ago. Now, for some, that is a really confronting and, quite frankly, confounding experience. And it is very easy to get snowed or confused or alarmed by that Santa sack, as you've described it, of tools and equally of demands on a journalist that compete on a journalist's time and energy and attention span. But with experience, and I think with the newer breed of journalists who by and large are digital natives, which I sadly am not, these new demands are almost de rigueur, they just come with the turf. And so too, I think modern journalists are becoming more adept at sorting the wheat from the chaff, at knowing where they can prioritise their energies and at what time. At when to sweat the big stuff,
Don't be afraid of your own interests. So don't feel as though you're foolish because you actually like reading trashy magazines, or you can remember the names of, someone's 7 husbands more rapidly than you can the Prime Ministers of Australia. On the other hand, if you're passionate about politics, don't be ashamed of that either, because in our platforms, in our journalism, all of human life is represented. And there's no, it's a great political splash out of Canberra may not in fact be as well read online as something about, or even in the newspapers, as something about, the latest kind of discovery in health that, by eating something you might actually, be doing your body damage or something like that, or the latest advice around parenting. People are interested in so many things, and your own interests are vital to that. If you're passionate about something, you're going to make the people who you're telling about that interested. So recognise that and don't be ashamed of them and use them.
The way we're telling stories has been changing enormously, but it's definitely a moving feast. There's a lot of experimentation going on with how we tell stories. We're experimenting with video. We're experimenting with using Tableau to show data in new ways, and those are skills that a lot of our reporters are leading us with, rather than the management leading the reporters.
It's not a question of where we should go, it's a question of where our audience is and is going. And the biggest mega trend is mobile. In Australia today and around the planet, more people will start to access digital services via their smartphones and tablets than by any other device. And once we cross that bridge, we're never going back, right? That will continue to play out in terms of access to media consumption services, probably for about another 3 to 5 years. And in that same period of time, the next wave of new technology will be that to the nth degree, which is wearables, right? So if you've heard of Google Glass, that's one example. If you own a Fitbit or a health monitor of some sort, that's another example. And that's sort of atomizing the form factors even more, so it becomes smaller, less obtrusive, much more time and location sensitive, context sensitive. And in theory, or the theory is that these devices will be actively sensing what we're doing and attempting to provide us with services and information just in time.
Any young journalist these days will have filmmaking skills, must have filmmaking skills. This is a wonderful, wonderful development in journalism, because it means that you have a palette of storytelling things that you can put together in the right constellation to tell the right story. So the ideas can be associated also with the storytelling creativity of it, as well as the story that you're telling, if you will. It's not just the idea that you're talking about, it's the idea of how you communicate the idea, if you will. So it's a very, very creative time. How do you think about it? You think conceptually, does this fit into who, what, where, when? If so, am I telling people news they already know? If so, move on. I think the premium ought to be, now obviously newsrooms have got to be covering the news, but there's also wire services that we own or pay half of. So the news judgment decisions are becoming really fascinating and really creative. The premium, and where I think the most creative stuff is now, is if you think about the 3 different types of story there are. There's the story you know that is coming and everybody has to cover, and we've still got to do that. Great example, federal budget. You know, the time when the government remits to the community what it's doing and how and why. Everybody's got to cover that, and we've got to do it better than anyone else. There's the second type of story. Everybody's got to cover it, nobody saw it coming. 9/11. You've got to do it. You've got to do it well. Then there's the story that I'm interested in, and that I'm interested in when I've got a news director hat on, or an editor hat on, or a content creation hat on. And that is the story that is an idea that somebody else hasn't had, or an angle that somebody else hasn't got, or coming and telling a story that nobody else has told.
The way every reporter's role has changed has been pretty profound in the last few years. Our court reporters, they manage as many as 5 or 6 stories a day. They file on their phones running between courtrooms, because they need to get their copy to us as quickly as possible. So it's created a great deal of excitement, it's created a great deal of challenge for them, but it's really sort of got the blood firing in all of us.
What's happened in the last 5 or 10 years is that everyone has become incredibly dependent. Everyone I know working in politics, working in journalism, has become incredibly dependent on their phones. I mean, a smartphone is essentially a tool that allows you to write a story, send it through to your news desk, possibly do a video update, possibly do an audio voiceover for a story. I mean, it's essentially all you need to be a journalist these days. That's a great thing, but what it hasn't done is allow people to switch off. It's had the opposite effect. It's harder to switch off at the end of the day and put the phone down and say, all right, I'm done for the day.
We need to size up that opportunity. We need to size up what the market is, what the traffic is, what the revenue approach to that is. And editorial are involved in all those processes. They're the ones who understand the audience, and we need to talk to them and get them to give us a bit of a sizing to help guide that opportunity and guide what that content set might be. So in many cases, the editorial guys are really KPI'd on those traffic elements. They understand what they need to do, how much content we need to actually produce in order to meet those marks.